What it do, NMA crew? Hey man, listen, I'm back with another $5 a month rant request from ISOP. I'll be talking about Dancer in the Dark, a movie from the year 2000 starring Bjork. Let's just get right into it. Actually, there's probably a few things I should get out of the way first. First thing is that Bjork is either my favorite or my second favorite musical artist of all time. So I'm probably going into this a little biased, but I mean, as a quick spoiler, look into the future of this video, I, like many people, thought her performance was absolutely phenomenal. Like, obscenely good for somebody who never had any other acting credits. Like, that, it was incredible. But I might just be glazing because she's either her or Kikuo is my favorite artist of all time. So I went into this with a very open mind. I was very excited to watch this movie. But the major caveat is the guy who directed it, Lars von Trier, honestly, his movies seem to have a style that is very appealing to me, but there were some, there were technically allegations against him from Bjork. I'm far too much of a Bjork fanboy to ever think that she would just lie or make something up like that. And so I think it's absolutely disgusting, and I really like this movie, but the director, fuck you. I really like that is I wish the worst of you. I hope you die. Fuck you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the movie a little bit, which was actually pretty good. Really good, honestly. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not totally sure where to start. I had some thoughts in the beginning, and then my feelings about it gradually changed as I went on through the movie. The main thing from the beginning that I noticed was that Selma, the main character, which is played by Bjork, is an immigrant girl from Czechoslovakia who is going blind in both of her eyes. It's gradually, but it's very quickly approaching. Basically, she knows that her son is going to face the same exact fate as her, and she is saving up money for a surgery for him. She is obviously, in many ways, a somewhat vulnerable person because she is not very well off. She works a very difficult job. English is not her first language. She is like on her way to being totally disabled. She's a single mother. Like, the life is like materially kind of just shit for her. But all she cares about is making her son happy. Even though, she has the classic disagreements that a lot of mothers and sons have, and he does things that, drive her up the wall a lot. But at the end of the day, the only reason that she hates those things is because she thinks that it's going to be bad for him, and she cares about him more than anything else. There's a cop character who she shares her secret with, that she's going blind, and he is maybe the least likable character I've seen in years. He reminds me of Marmeladov from Crime and Punishment, and that he's just so pathetic, and he's like always acknowledging that he's pathetic but never changing. He's like running out of money, but he's not willing to like stop buying his wife expensive shit because I guess he thinks she's a gold digger and he doesn't want to lose her. And even though he knows Bjork is saving up to do an operation on her son, which is going to cure his blindness, he just takes the money anyways. And like he tries to ask for it first. He's like, "Oh no, I shouldn't have asked." And then he's like, "By the way, I'm thinking about offing myself, if that changes your answer on if you want to give me the money. I'm gonna like definitely off myself." And then it was like, oh, okay, so this guy's just like groveling at the feet of a woman who probably works not 10 times harder than him, but probably works substantially harder for him and has a more valiant goal with her savings. Just like groveling at her feet, begging her for money, and then eventually when she rightfully says no because there's something much more important at stake for her, he just fucking steals the money. Just straight up steals it from her, abusing the fact that she's blind. And basically he she confronts him. A lot of things happen, and he essentially he asks her, but also pressures and essentially forces her to shoot him to death. And then she does so for the sake of getting this money for her son, the money that she earned, she saved up by working in a factory while going blind. It's really rough. It's really, really, really bleak stuff. And that scene and the entire character of the cop there was just absolutely pathetic. I mean, there's nothing likable or redeeming about him. I mean, he was having money problems. That's it. But I think he was a little bit of not a foil, but a contrasting figure for her, because he wanted to go out in a blaze of like everybody knowing the kind of person he was as he went out. Like, he wanted to go out without anybody knowing about the skeletons in his closet. He wanted to look like the good guy, even to the detriment of everybody who he's leaving behind. He left behind his wife when he did it, by just not being around anymore. He just absolutely destroyed Selma's life because he forced her to do it, and obviously she's going to get arrested and subsequently sentenced to death. And he just did that all in service of his own reputation, and that is exactly the opposite of what Selma does later on in the movie. Going to a more foundational thing, I have a couple of notes here, so I'm going to be jumping around a little bit in this kind of review. But the camera work is it's shot on like a fucking flip phone. Like, it's shot in such low quality. It's like almost comical. And I see why a lot of people don't like it. It's a very artsy directorial choice. It both gives the feeling of a very like low budget, scrappy, poor production, which mimics obviously Selma's material condition as a poor immigrant living in America, struggling to make ends meet and saving up for a surgery. So that makes sense. I don't know if this is reaching, but obviously it was kind of like not very focused. Like, it was kind of like blurry. Like, it's really low res. So I don't know if that's like a subtle way of mimicking Selma's gradual blindness, or if I'm just reaching and being stupid. I have no idea. But I thought it was definitely a neat touch, and I don't mind it when a movie mixes it up like this. I don't mind it at all. I like it when movies do things that are unique, and this didn't really take away from my enjoyment of the cinematography at all. There are moments where the cinematography does delve into the more traditional tactics employed by most productions, and that is when the musical segments start happening in the story. The musical segments in this story are jarring, somewhat uncanny and disturbing. It's like if a super realistic, gritty, just absolutely bleak, depressing, nihilistic story was a musical, and they just started bursting out into like happy song and dance despite not being in a happy situation whatsoever. It's like that clash of what the emotions ought to be like in that situation and the emotions that the characters are displaying is very uncanny, very disturbing. But at the same time, there is an odd sense of beauty to it as the color scheme becomes vastly more vibrant once these sequences begin. The entire directorial style changes, and obviously the tone changes as well, and you just get Bjork's absolutely beautiful vocals. So one thing about Bjork's music is that it has often, one of the main themes in her music is exposing what she sees as a false dichotomy between like evolution and technology and nature. She has a lot of naturalistic instrumentation in her songs, as well as technological instrumentation, especially as you like progress throughout her discography. And so I think the style that a lot of these musical bits are in fits so well with her normal musical style of utilizing unorthodox techniques for the instrumentation. Like, for example, in one of my favorite albums of hers, Medulla, it is almost, I believe the entire instrumentation is done with like digitally influencing vocals. So like it's all just vocals that are like spoken into a microphone. There are no instruments in it, and then those are digitally manipulated into making it sound very cohesive. And I love that album. It's amazing. There's a song on that album called Submarine, and that's where I first realized another thing about Bjork's music, that a lot of times her vocals have sort of they almost float above the music. It's not on all of her songs, not by any means, but I've noticed it in a few of her songs. I noticed it in her This Country Makes It Hard to Fuck as well, which isn't her song, she's featured on it. But she has this quality of sometimes just feeling like she's floating almost angelically above the music and transcending it almost. And I think that was just beautiful here. I absolutely got that from this movie, and I really like how it stayed true to her philosophy with her normal music of using atypical instrumentation and, you know, machinery and all of these like strange contexts that you wouldn't usually think of having music in. I thought that was very beautiful. It was also, despite the musical segments feeling somewhat uncanny, there was something a bit inspiring about the fact that despite the material condition not being great, Selma was genuinely so happy. Like, this was genuinely something that worked for her. You can see it as just a disturbing coping mechanism, but at the end of the day, she did seem to genuinely be happy. That seemed to be what the director was trying to communicate, with the colors becoming more vibrant and with her performance becoming much more emotive. It was just like a total 180. It was as if her love for music and musicals transcended her current situation, so that no matter what situation she was in, she could escape to those musicals, and that would make her happy. And the fact is, even when she's in a jail cell, it's hard, but she's able to do it. No matter what condition she's in, she can make beautiful music and she can imagine beautiful things. And that's sort of a consolation for the absolute horrors that befall her consistently throughout this entire movie. I mean, there's pretty much nothing good that happens to her except that she has these musicals to fall back on. She references the idea of falling back on somebody or something several times throughout the movie, as in having people to rely on. There are definitely positive people in her sphere, but generally she just cannot rely on anybody, despite being a very vulnerable person and needing to rely on people for some things. I mean, if you're going completely blind, it's going to be difficult to navigate the world without any assistance from people that you trust. She comes from Czechoslovakia. I don't know what the government's like over there, but it's mentioned in the court case, it's wielded against her, that she believes communism works better for people. So maybe there's something of a commentary there about how she comes from a place where maybe it's more customary for people to act as a community and rely on each other more, but most of the problems that happened to affect her once she moved to America were from people being, you know, hyper individualistic. I have an anime YouTube channel, so I mentioned the sort of dichotomy between the Eastern and Western philosophy of individualism and collectivism a lot, and I hate to overstate it, but I do think it was something that was explicitly called attention to here, because she would constantly talk about how in musicals there's always somebody to rely on. Everybody's working together towards one common goal. They're not all out trying to do their own individual thing and outshine each other or anything like that. And, you know, the fact that that's not how the real world is at all is what ended up killing her and causing her all of the trauma that it did. She mentions that she went to, the one thing that she did love about America, the reason she went to America is because it was, I believe, the only place where she could get the surgery done for her son. But she mentions that she really likes the musicals in America. So it's like she sees a very, you know, idealized version of it on TV and in media, and then she gets there and it's sort of like a harrowing reality of what it's actually like to live here, and she starts struggling with the less desirable aspects of it. I mean, it's a very bleak story. It's a bleak story to the extent to where I find it somewhat unrealistic. Like, it's like convenient that so many bad things can happen. But I do get it. You know, it's supposed to be a tragedy. It's supposed to be an exceedingly bleak movie, and I don't mind that. But definitely to be mentioned that it is very, very, very bleak. I live in America. Nothing like this has ever happened to me. But, it's supposed to sort of highlight that lack of being able to rely on somebody, I think. And in that sense, it might be a little bit of a political commentary. There's also obviously some sort of political commentary about the death penalty, as she was wrongfully convicted and then sentenced to death. That's a very bad thing, of course. But the fact that she gets sentenced to death is very interesting to me, because she is effectively waiting at the beginning of the movie, waiting for her eyesight to go. She knows it's going to go, and everything's going to go dark at some point, and she has always known, and that date is just approaching, and it will come. That reminded me a lot initially of the idea of death. Obviously we are all going to die. It's coming for all of us, and we know it is. It's totally inevitable, and we just have to sort of deal with that as best as we can. It's incredibly difficult to deal with, and she mentions a lot of times wanting things to never end. Like the musical. She never wants the musical to end. She always leaves during the second to last song, so there's no feeling of conclusion to it. So it's as though it can go on forever, because she doesn't want it to be finite. She doesn't want it to be over. And I believe that's why she had her son, despite knowing that he would suffer the same disability that she would eventually suffer. It's because she knew she was going blind. She knew she was going to die. She knew she wasn't going to experience all the things in life she wanted to, see all the things she wanted to see before her vision went. And so the consolation was that she wanted to have a child who could live on and do the things that she couldn't. So that it's not like her life is over. It's not like her dreams are over. He can live on. He can fulfill those things. And that is a very, very bleak reading, but I once again do think that was intentional. And it's very, very, very sad that not only did she go blind, but then she was also waiting for her death penalty to be up, just kind of sitting there, being forced to confront how finite she is, how insignificant she is, both in the sense that obviously she's not very well off, she's not a very influential or opulent person, but also in the grand scheme of the universe, she is going to, die relatively soon and probably eventually be forgotten. It's definitely a very nihilistic story of feeling helpless and feeling, taken advantage of and all of that, because all of those things do in fact happen. But it's got a somewhat positive message to it at times. I mean, she ends by being cut off in the middle of what she says is the second to last song, as her son will outlive her and maybe go on to achieve the things that she never could, or not achieve, but rather experience the experiences she never could. So she's okay with, she's somewhat okay. She's crying. She's a mess. You don't just deal with death normally, but she has taken solace in the fact that that is going to be the case, and she's cut off in the middle of that performance to die. She died doing what she loved, which was, singing and participating in the musical that was going on inside her head. And I guess that's something. I really relate to this idea of hating the approaching inevitability of growing old and deterioration and death, and going blind. For me, I'm always worried I'm going to lose my, my memory, my hearing and stuff like that. But obviously death is the big one. It's like the grand motivator of humanity. But I had a very similar experience recently as I was watching Ozymandias. I did it like 3 videos ago. I made a video about Ozymandias and how beautiful, how nostalgic it is, how much it just brings you back to a simpler time. And no matter how old you grow, it will still be fundamentally funny and appealing and beautiful, nostalgic, childlike wonder. It has everything. And it's just a beautiful, hilarious, cute story. I never finished Ozymandias. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I believe it's a classic anime. I think it's amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed every episode of it, but I don't have the heart to finish it because I know it's going to end. I know that time is progressing in the story. I know that they're all going to graduate and go their separate ways, and the story will be over. Um, and I don't want to see that happen. I need there to always be more Azumanga that I haven't watched yet. And I don't know if I'm ever going to finish it. I probably won't, to be honest. Maybe one day I will when I get older because I like it so much. But I always want there to be more that I haven't seen to the end of for something like that. And so I definitely related to that opinion she had about musicals. And I thought it was very unique. I'm going to check through my notes here to see some of the other stuff that I put. Sorry if this is extremely rambling. That's just how my rants go right now. There were some funny moments early, weirdly. Like when they were in the movie theater. I thought that was pretty funny. It was like unintentionally funny, or funny in kind of a dark way where it's like, wow, so we're being real frank. We're being real blunt here. Like when her son's like, I forgot what she asks her son, but he's like, why would you ask me such a dumbass question, Mom? And it was just, it was funny to me. It was funny in how blunt it was. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about it. I'm looking, themes of the show must go on. I mentioned the low budget feel of the camera work, her struggles as an immigrant, the transcendental quality of the musicals, and how despite your material condition, you can always find some sort of solace, even if that's not a great consolation for the horrors that you are going to endure just as a human. The human experience can be, my dad yelled at my dog, the human experience can be very terrifying, and we're all going to die one day, and that's pretty horrible. But anybody has enough control of their life to be able to take some solace in it. That's pretty much everything. I hate the cop guy. There's a little bit of a theme of communism there. I fucking hate the director. Absolutely unforgivable. Yeah. Bjork forever. I just alright, so I'll end this with a quick little glaze session. Because Bjork is one of the most talented musicians that I've ever encountered. She's just one of my personal favorites. I love the vulnerability that she's able to communicate through her vocals. She'll push her vocals to the limit where they're cracking and stuff like that. Almost sounds like they're breaking sometimes, but she's also capable of these just beautiful angelic performances, and she can flow between those so well. And I am so happy that translated well into her acting. She has such a vulnerable, raw, candid performance where she's really, really selling the character. It's like there's dissonance to me because I'm seeing Bjork and I'm seeing all these things happen to Bjork that are horrible, but and I'm like, oh God, no, you can't do that to Bjork. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. But she's playing the role so well. But it's so weird because I've spent so much time. I've listened to probably every song in Bjork's discography. And I've seen videos of her performances. I've seen all her music videos. I've seen countless interviews with her. And it's just weird seeing this figure that I have such heavily reinforced preconceived notions about acting as a totally different person. It's bizarre. It's uncanny. And it probably added to the overall appeal of the movie for me. But just kind of in the fucked up sense. Very candid, honest, vulnerable performance, but also during those musical segments, she's able to transition into that transcendental sort of a girl boss angel with beautiful vocals that I've always known her as. I think it was a phenomenal performance. I thought it was a great movie, an even better performance, and I'm excited to watch more live-action movies for my $5 a month patrons. That's pretty much it. I'm sure I forgot something that's going to really bother me later, but yeah, have a good one, guys.